Okay, so in this video, I want to take a look at RAG fusion. So I think this is a really interesting technique. As far as I know, there's no academic paper for it. There's a blog post by this person who I think has created it called Adrian Radischool. And I think this technique is really interesting in a number of ways. So we have a number of key ways that we can improve RAG. So I talked about this in the sort of tour of RAG talk I gave recently. But here we've got basically, you can rewrite queries, you can change retrieval, you can store data better and stuff like that. You can rank and filter things back. And you can change your LLM, you can change the prompting that you're using here. So a lot of what the rank fusion is going to be doing, you're going to see, is rewriting queries and then filtering and ranking things in a better way. So let's have a look at how they actually do this in here. So this is from the blog post. So I like that he talks about that RAG fusion aspires to bridge the gap between what users explicitly ask and what they intend to ask. So this is one of the common problems that you see with RAG, is that someone really wants to know a variety of different things about a topic, but they just type in that topic. It's the same issue that search engines have for a variety of different things like that. So the idea here is that this is going to do a number of sort of key things. First off, it's going to do query duplication with a twist. So basically it's going to rewrite the one query from the user into being multiple queries here. And they're going to send each of those for a vector search lookup. So the idea here is that the user is going to put in their query. It's going to generate multiple similar queries to this. And then each of these queries that comes out is going to have its own vector search to bring back different things. So in this case, you can see that the one query is being turned into 5 different queries, and each of those will bring back different results. Then those results are ranked using reciprocal rank fusion. And this is where the sort of fusion part comes in. And so using that algorithm, it will basically re-rank the outputs from multiple ones of these. And we can look at different types of re-ranking perhaps in another video. But the idea is that then you're getting the best of various queries from your vector search database here. We then basically take those re-ranked outputs and treat them as if they're the general context and pass them into the generative output, where the large language model will combine it with the original query and the prompt and then formulate an answer for this. So one of the nice examples that it gives in the blog post, and one of the things I think you could be really playing with this idea for your own particular RAG, is that you can take that user input and you can rewrite different versions of it. So in this case, it's showing that, okay, if someone's asking something, you could take it directly, but then you could, ask, sort of rephrase it to get one of the queries about the economic perspective of this, and another one to be about the public health perspective of this. So you're sort of coming at the same topic from different angles when you actually do your searches in here. So this is something that I think is really key for dealing with certain kinds of RAGs where people are not asking very specific questions. They're asking perhaps vaguer questions, but they want a wide variety of data in the response coming back. So let's jump into the code and have a look at how this can be done with LangChain now. Okay, so in this notebook, we're going to look at reproducing RAG fusion and playing around with it using LangChain in here. So I've got a bunch of standard inputs here for this. We're actually not going to be using OpenAI. We're not going to be using TikToken. I'm actually going to be using the Palm 2 model for this. So you can also use it as an example to see how the Palm 2 model actually works. So I've made a data set of scraping some articles about Singapore tourist attractions and a number of things like that. But I've also saved it as a pre-made Chroma DB in here. So I will walk through doing the sort of pre-processing so that you could use that for your particular task. But we're actually going to just download the Chroma DB and put it into Colab here and use it this way. So here I'm using the new Google Colab secrets. So if you see the key on the side of Colab nowadays, that allows you to basically sort of pre-install environment variables and bring them in like this, which actually makes it quite easy to do lots of notebooks and then change your keys when you want and have these available here. So when you go through, you'll need to actually make a key. You can actually make a key for Palm 2 MakerSuite. At the MakerSuite site, you can just get an API key for free. Currently, Google is letting everyone use the Palm 2 model for free. So why not try it out while we're doing this? Okay, so I've got some of my inputs here. And I'll be bringing in some other things later on. We'll use the Google Palm chat model as we go through. But we're going to basically just bring in, if we are running the sort of ingestion process, and like I said, later on, you can actually just load the ChromaDB directly in. But if you wanted to do the pre-processing yourself, here is just basically taking in a folder of text files, running it through, loading these up, then splitting those documents into text chunks. I haven't done a lot of checking with the chunk size here or anything like that. If I was actually going to use this in production, I'd put a lot more effort into getting the chunk sizes right. But I've got the basics here going on. We're using one of my favorite embeddings, the BGE embeddings here. This is a nice small embedding, but actually gives us really nice embeddings back. So here, if you're actually making the Chroma database, you would uncomment this and put this together. Otherwise, you can just load in the Chroma database here, which has the embeddings all computed already for the text and the text there. And you just need to pass in the embedding function so that you're going to be using the same BGE embeddings that I used when I made it. If you were saving out the Chroma database, I've left the code in there for that. So you can see that when we do a simple sort of query using our database, we're getting some things back related to what we want to do in here. So next up, we want to set up a retriever. So this is the sort of simplest way we can set up a retriever. If you wanted to add MMR, and maybe I will do a whole video just quickly about MMR in the future, you could add these things in to improve the results here. But we very quickly get to making a simple sort of chat chain here. So here you can see that we're using the chat Google Palm model. We're bringing in the chat prompt template. So basically we're bringing in a number of things to use the LangChain expression language in here. I'm setting up a prompt. So we've just got a very simple prompt going on in here. And then we're making a chain. And remember, we're just passing these through to basically put a chain together. So we've got the retriever getting our context. We're passing in the question into the prompt. We then basically pass that into our model, and then our string output parser put this together. And sure enough, now if we do something like tell me about Universal Studios Singapore, you can see even when I've left out the S or spelling wrong, it's getting it quite well. We're getting back a pretty good response back from this at this stage. So in this case, probably the rank fusion is not going to help it hugely. And maybe because my question was actually quite broad in the first place. But you could imagine that if I just typed in Universal Studios Singapore or something like that, then this is where the rank fusion could help out a lot. So the rank fusion, we're bringing in a lot of the same things. You'll see we've got our chat prompt template here. So we've basically got our system template, or our system prompt is that you're a helpful assistant that generates multiple search queries based on single input. And then we've got a human prompt template that we're going to actually pass in. And you'll notice that this is what we're passing this into here is to generate multiple search queries related to the question. So we're actually going to output 4 queries from this as we go through. So this is the first part of the RAG fusion, right? Where we need to generate similar queries for this as we're going to go through. You can certainly play around with the prompt here. You may want to have it so that you've got, one query coming from one angle and another one from a different angle. If you wanted to have something approach it from some other way, that kind of thing. You would play around with getting this prompt right. But then once we've got that, we're going to just generate this query chain here. So you can see this query chain is just basically taking in our prompt, passing it through to our LLM, which in this case is the chat Google Palm. Remember, you can get a key for this for free from Google for MakerSuite. And then we're basically passing the output here. And we're going to split these queries up so that we can pass these in. So you can see here, if I pass in my original query of just Universal Studios Singapore, first off, it's going to basically take this through and split this up. After that, it's going to do the ranking. So in this case, we've got the function here for doing our ranking. This is something you could certainly change to do the ranking in a variety of different ways. But then the idea is that then we basically have this RAG fusion chain, which is going to first take off our generate queries chain. It's then going to basically map to our retriever so that we get the results back for each of those queries that we ran through. And then finally, it's going to put it through the reciprocal rank fusion here. So if we turn on LangChain debugging, we can actually look at what happens here. We can see that, okay, we start off with this query. So we've got the prompts as we go through this, and it's got to generate out multiple answers back here. So this is where Langsmith can be really useful for getting these traces. But anyway, if we look at this output here, we can see that here are 4 search queries related to the Universal Studios Singapore. Okay, what are the rides at Universal Studios Singapore? How much does it cost to go there? What are the best things to do there? And what time of year is best to visit? So these are 4 of the queries. Now, we could have sort of guided these by telling it we want one query about times, one query about pricing of getting in or something like that. If we were just going to be doing things about theme parks or tourist attractions, that kind of thing. We've now got these that it can basically pass through, and it goes through and gets out the various contexts that it's finding for these. And we can see that some of them are going to be heavily related to Universal Studios Singapore. Some of them are not going to be related, or certainly not as related to this. So the retriever will then basically go through all of that and bring that back. And really the next thing we want, though, is we would want to basically now pass this into a final chain. So at this point, we're getting our retrieved responses back that have been sort of filtered from this and are ready to go into our final chain. So let's make the final chain. We can just use what we had earlier on of just answer the question based on the following context, except now we're passing in those filtered returns that we got from this, which has basically used the scores that we got back from this. And we're feeding that into the context here. And then we're feeding in the original question in there as well. So now if we run this through the whole thing, so just putting it together as a full RAG Fusion chain, we've got basically the chain going to get our context and get our question from the start through this prompt to the model to our string output parser. Now we go through the whole thing. You can see that, okay, we've got a bunch of different queries that have come through. We've got it doing the searches and returning these. And as it basically filters out those searches, does those things, eventually it comes back with our final response here. So this is going to be sort of the amalgamation of finding the best things from a variety of different searches and then combining them with the original query that we had back. So this is basically what RAG Fusion does. It can certainly be a little bit confusing to look at all the chainable LangChain expression language stuff being put together, but it's something that once you sort of get used to this, you can actually write a variety of different alternatives to this. So you could do the rewriting of user queries in a whole bunch of different ways. So maybe that's something we can look at, just sort of playing around with the LangChain expression language and RAG stuff in the future if people are interested. Anyway, as always, if you've got questions, please put them in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please click like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye for now.